everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I am so excited to be sitting here talking to you all because I am filming my first of many end of year videos, end of year favorites videos, that is. So today's topic is going to be my top 10 favorite historical romances that I read in the year 2022. And just like with last year's videos, I am going to be ranking these books from number 10 to number 1. And when I tell you I sat here just agonizing over my ranking, even though it's really not that serious, but to me it is that serious. So I'm just so excited to share these 10 books with you all and tell you why I love them all so much. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right on into it. Number 10 on this list is probably the hottest historical romance I read this year, and if you know me, you know that this author had to be on this list. That is The Bride Goes Rogue by one of my historical romance queens, Joanna Shupe. So this is book 3 in the Fifth Avenue Rebels series. So this is a hate to love romance between Preston and Catherine. So before this book starts, in the past, both Catherine and Preston were put into an arranged marriage situation by their fathers, but Preston essentially never took that promise or that arrangement seriously. And so Catherine shows up to his office one day and tells him, hey, I'm ready to get married now. Let's start planning this. And Preston is like, what are you talking about? I never want to get married to you or anyone else. Like, okay, thanks. Catherine gets pissed, and so she yells at him and leaves his office. So then a little while later, Catherine comes to this decision that she just wants to have an affair. She just wants to have a fun time. And so her friend Nellie tells her about this masquerade ball where she can definitely have a tryst with someone. And so everyone, of course, is wearing masks. Like I said, it's a masquerade. And so she meets this really hot dude and steamy times ensue. And when I tell you, parts of this scene live in my head rent-free. I am not exaggerating. And so then come to find out that mysterious man was none other than Preston, because of course, like I said, this book is seriously hot. Oh my goodness. There were points where I literally had to put the book down so that I could like fan myself and collect my thoughts, okay? And also I was just obsessed with this hate to love dynamic, the fact that Catherine now hates Preston, and how they fall for each other, and there is some quality groveling by Preston, which is one of the reasons why I love him so much. So yeah, this was amazing, and no one is surprised that it made it onto my top 10. For number 9, we have a book that I absolutely could have read in one sitting, and I am slowly but surely becoming obsessed with this author's works. That is A Daring Pursuit by Kate Bateman. This is book 2 in her Ruthless Rivals series. This series centers around the Davies and the Montgomerys. They are two families that have been feuding for like 500 years. Definitely very Romeo and Juliet-esque, except their feud isn't quite that serious. It's more like funny and entertaining. But this is a frenemies to lovers slash like frenemies with benefits romance between Karis, who is a Davies, and Tristan, who is a Montgomery. So Karis loves to scandalize society. She loves to put on a show to basically keep potential suitors away from her because she has had a bad experience with the one lover that she has had in her past. But Tristan has always seen through her act, and these two have been insanely attracted to each other for years. And so one day they're talking and Karis reveals that she feels that sex is overrated because her very little experience was negative, unfortunately. And so Tristan decides to make a deal with her to show her what she's missing, that they will have a week of clandestine trysts and then they will go their separate ways. And of course they don't go their separate ways. So one of the things that I love about this book and Kate Bateman's writing in general is that she writes just fabulous banter. Some of the best banter that I've ever read in a historical romance. And the way that their frenemies with benefits dynamic turns into very real feelings is everything. And this is also Kate Bateman's sexiest book yet. It is so well done, and I am just obsessed with this couple and their story. So for number 8 on this list, we have my top favorite sapphic romance that I have ever read at this point, and that is The Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. This is book 2 in her Wild Winchester series, and first of all, we just have to talk about the Winchesters themselves. So some years back, the Baron Vanderbean adopted these 6 children and fathered them as his own. And so these 6 siblings could not be any more different from each other, but they somehow make up the most adorable and hilarious family ever that I truly wish I could be a part of. I just love them all with my heart and soul. And so each romance in this series is going to center around a different Winchester sibling. So we have Tommy, or Thomasina, who is a master of disguise. Basically, each of these siblings have a really incredible and iconic set of skills. And so they will perform heists for people. Basically, they just want to take down the patriarchy, and it's amazing. But Tommy, like I said, she is the master of disguise. She can become anyone, young, old, male, female, it doesn't matter. And so she comes across our other heroine, Philippa, who has kind of resigned herself when it comes to love. She's never really been attracted to anyone who has courted her or anything like that. But one day, the new Baron Vanderbean shows up at Hyde Park, I believe it is, and Philippa is just insanely attracted to the Baron, who is actually Tommy in disguise. And one of the things that I really loved is that Tommy reveals herself to Philippa very early on in the book, so there's not a lot of like deceit going on, which I really appreciate. So it's just this beautiful and tender and sensual and hilarious romance between Tommy and Philippa. All the while, Philippa is collaborating with the Winchesters to take down this man who's doing some shady things, and it's just absolutely amazing. Cannot recommend this book highly enough. I have since read book 3, and unfortunately I didn't love that one quite as much, and I have not yet read book 1, but you don't need to read the other books to enjoy this one. I highly recommend that you just pick this one up as soon as possible. Number 7 on this list is a book by an author that I discovered this year, and I have absolutely fallen in love with the books that I have read from her so far. So that is The Devil is a Marquis by Elisa Braden. This is technically book 4 in her Rescued from Ruin series, but you definitely do not need to read the first 3 books of this series to enjoy this one, because this one kind of stands on its own. So this absolutely has vibes of Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. So if you have read and loved that book, you absolutely need to put this book on your immediate TBR for sure, because Chatham, our hero, reminds me a lot of Sebastian, but I actually personally love Chatham even more than Sebastian, so that's my hot take. But the premise for this one's really interesting. This is an arranged marriage of convenience situation. So we have Charlotte, who is an American heiress, and her father desperately wants to marry her off to someone with a title, someone of nobility, just because he wants the title. He wants that title in his family. So then we have Chatham. His first name's Benedict, I believe, but throughout the book he's known as Chatham. I believe his father kind of misused the funds of the estate, and so now Chatham just has this title and no funds to support himself or his family, and so he's kind of dabbled in selling himself to women to make ends meet. And so this is kind of an arrangement made in heaven, because Chatham needs money and Charlotte's father needs to marry her off to someone with a title, and so they make this deal that Benedict and Charlotte have to stay married for a year, and that Benedict has to completely give up alcohol. I believe there were a couple of other stipulations, but I can't quite remember what they are. So they end up going to his family's estate, which is like crumbling around them. And so we see that they start bonding with each other and falling for each other through repairing this estate. And Benedict's character arc and character development is some of the best that I think I've ever read, because we're seeing him go from this wastrel and this alcoholic and someone who has pretty much given up on life to, by the end of the book, he is like the best husband ever, and he's just amazing, and I love him so much. And you know what they say, reformed rakes make the best husbands, and that is absolutely the case with this book. And Charlotte and Benedict just have amazing sexual chemistry and tension, and there's some really hot scenes in this, of course, and their love story is just absolutely everything. So if you are someone who has been sleeping on Elisa Braden and this book in particular, you absolutely need to pick this up ASAP. For number 6 on this list, we have a Beauty and the Beast inspired historical romance that took me by surprise for sure. I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. That is When She Said I Do by Celeste Bradley. So this is book 1 in the Worthington series, and the Worthingtons are a family that are like the Bridgertons on steroids. Oh my goodness, they entertained me so much throughout reading this book. So this is about Calliope, who is one of the Worthingtons, and so her and her family have no choice but to seek shelter one night when they're on the road and it's raining really heavily, and so they come across this seemingly abandoned mansion. And so Calliope decides to be a little sneaky sneakster, and she explores the upstairs bedroom. She comes across this beautiful pearl necklace when this scarred man comes into the room, who is Ren, our hero. And Ren is not in a good place, similar to Chatham from Devil is a Marquis. Ren is an alcoholic. He has pretty much given up on life. He is a recluse. He just lives in this house by himself. He doesn't really have servants anymore, and this house is crumbling around him. So he's kind of delirious when he first sees Calliope. He thinks that she's like some angel, like some spirit, and so he just starts making out with Calliope. And then Calliope's brother discovers them, which then forces them into a marriage of convenience. And there's like something that happens, I think because she's frightened of Ren, she ends up accidentally breaking the pearl necklace that she found. And so they strike this deal that to make up for each pearl on this necklace, she will in exchange give Ren a night of passion. And this is one of the hottest historical romances I read this year. I did not expect this book to be as steamy as it is. And just like the tension and chemistry between Ren and Calliope is everything. And also Ren is a scarred hero. I am a sucker for a scarred hero trope. It's one of my absolute favorites, and it's done so well in this book. I couldn't help but fall for Ren, and Calliope is also just a really fun character, and like I said, the Worthingtons are just absolutely insane, and I just really loved seeing Ren become this amazing man by the end of the story. And yeah, this is a really good one that I feel like not nearly enough people have read or talked about, so I highly recommend that you put this on your TBR. All right, now we're getting to my top 5 favorite historical romances of the year. This is when the ranking got very difficult for sure, because I truly love all of these romances pretty equally. But for number 5, I decided to go with a book by an author that I discovered this year that I have become absolutely obsessed with. So that is Nobody's Duke by Scarlett Scott. I have to give credit where credit's due. I need to thank Ava from Ava's Romance Books, because I remember hearing her talk about this book in one of her wrap-ups that she did earlier this year, where she compared this to Again the Magic by Lisa Kleypas, which is one of my top favorite historical romances ever. So I knew that I needed to pick this book up, and she gifted this copy of Nobody's Duke to me. I actually just got this in the mail today, so thank you so much, Ava. I'm so excited to have this book in my collection. But let's give you a summary, because there's a lot going on in this story. But we have Clay, who is the bastard son of a duke, and then we have Era, who is the daughter of an earl, I believe. So in the past, when they were about 17, 18 years old, this is a second chance romance, because back then they fell in love with each other and they had made plans to run away together and to get married. But because of a big misunderstanding, Era goes to their meeting spot and Clay never shows up. So she feels betrayed by him, and because of another situation, he feels betrayed by her. So now it's like 8 to 10 years later, and Era went on to marry a duke, and that duke was unfortunately murdered by this rebel group. And the League of Dukes, which is this spy organization, they are concerned that this rebel group is now going to try to murder Era. And so they assign someone from the Special League to be her bodyguard, and that person happens to be Clay. And so now they are in this forced proximity situation where they both hate each other's guts. And so this is just an amazing, angsty second chance romance. This gave me everything that I needed from the premise and more. Scarlett Scott also serves with the steamy scenes. They were very well done. And this is also just a very emotional romance as well, because Era's now a single mother. And this also has a really great suspenseful and mysterious element to it, given the rebel group that murdered her husband. And this is just wonderful. I also highly recommend book 2, which is Heartless Duke. That was also fabulous, and that's also a hate to love that has to do with like a captor-captive situation. But ultimately I had to put this book on my top 10 list. So for number 4 on this list, we have another historical romance that totally took me by surprise. This actually ended up being my first 5-star read of 2022, and I definitely did not expect to love this book as much as I did. And that is The Devil and the Heiress by Harper St. George. This is book 2 in her Gilded Age Heiresses series. So this is about Violet and Christian. So Violet has been put into this arranged marriage situation with someone that she does not want to marry. And then we have Christian, who has come up with this scheme that he's going to convince Violet to run away with him and hopefully marry him, because he is in desperate need of money for his estate. He is an earl. So this book just ticked so many boxes for me. In fact, my Goodreads review of this book is just a literal checklist of all the things that I loved about this book. So I'm gonna read a few things off of this list for you guys, but if you wanna know my full thoughts, definitely go check out this Goodreads review, because this is quite lengthy for sure. But I thought that this was really well paced. I was engaged the entire time. I love historical romances where we have a depraved English nobleman and a bold, innocent American heiress. I also really appreciated that Violet is a romance author, or she's an aspiring romance author, and Christian is just endlessly supportive of her. There is, of course, the traveling forced proximity situation. There is so much chemistry between Violet and Christian. I was absolutely obsessed with them from page 1. Plenty of steamy scenes for sure. There was also some really great caretaking at one point. I also love books, of course, when the hero falls first. There does end up being a marriage of convenience between the two of them, and then towards the very end of this book it turns into a marriage in trouble situation, and I adore how that all resolved, because Christian did this amazing act of service for her, just this selfless act for her, and it was just amazing. So yes, cannot recommend this highly enough. Talking about this book makes me want to reread it. This was just such a fun time. All right, number 3 on this list. Man, this book hit me in the feels. I cried so much while reading the ending of this, and that is After Dark with the Duke by Julianne Long. So Julianne Long is definitely a hit or miss author for me, but when she is a hit, she is a hit. Like capital H-I-T. The books that I have loved by her are some of my absolute all-time favorite historical romances, and this one is no exception. So this is book 4 in her Palace of Rogues series. So this centers around this boarding house that is called the Grand Palace on the Thames. So this story follows Mariana, who is a 25-year-old opera singer. So she is disgraced when these 2 idiots fight a duel over her, and so she has no choice but to leave her current living situation, and she moves into the Grand Palace on the Thames. Then we have James, who is the Duke of Falkirk. He's 43 years old, so we have an age gap going on, and he is this kind of starchy, buttoned up, righteous duke. And so things do not start off on the best of terms between Mariana and James, because James judges Mariana from what he's read in the papers about her, and Mariana just sees this really cold, mean man, you know? And so there's a lot of verbal sparring between the two of them. And so what ensues is this hate to friends to lovers romance that is just so beautiful and tender. So basically what happens is James offers to tutor Mariana in the Italian language because as an opera singer, most of what we sing is in Italian, but Mariana isn't fluent in the language. She just knows how to sing it. But it's really helpful as an opera singer to know what you're singing about, right? So yeah, he starts tutoring her in the language, and through that, they start falling for each other. And what made me cry is that James, he kind of fucks up, and Mariana is just absolutely heartbroken, and so they split up. And then James does the most amazing grand gesture ever that I couldn't help. Like, I was sobbing reading the last chunk of this book, guys. Like, this book got me in my feels for sure. So I can't recommend this highly enough. I also really loved book 2 of this series, which is Angel in a Devil's Arms. That was, I think, one of my top 5 favorite historicals that I read last year. So yes, there are some times where Julianne Long has been a miss for me, but when she is a hit, it's absolutely amazing. So for number 2 on this list, I had to mention 2 books from the same historical romance series because these 2 books almost feel like the same book and the same story in my mind. So that is Mine Till Midnight and Seduce Me at Sunrise by Lisa Kleypas. These are books 1 and 2 in her Hathaway series. I read the entirety of this series in 2022. This series is just such a comfort read to me. I love the 5 Hathaway siblings that we're following, and in Mine Till Midnight in particular, this is the romance between Amelia, who was the eldest sister of the family, and then Cam Rohan, and then this book is between Kev and Winifred. I think she's known as Winnie throughout the book, who is another one of the Hathaway sisters. So the Hathaway siblings are just everything to me. This series has kind of a found family feel to it because of how amazing the Hathaway siblings are on their own, and then when they each have their own romances and their love interests come into the story, it's just absolutely spectacular. So with Mine Till Midnight, like I said, we have Amelia and then Cam, who is Romani, and we adore Cam in this house because he is someone who he knows what he wants. That's Amelia, and he's gonna do anything in his power to have her, and it's just amazing. The chemistry and the love between these two is absolutely everything. And then Seduce Me at Sunrise, I love this book almost just as much as book 1. Kev is also Romani, and he is someone who actually came into the Hathaway family when they were all teenagers. And so, oh my God, the angst and the pining between Kev and Winnie is absolutely everything. And the reason why these 2 books feel like the same story almost to me is that Kev and Winnie's relationship is featured quite a bit throughout Mine Till Midnight. Lisa Kleypas's romance series are definitely more interconnected than most other historical series that you'll read. But oh my God, both of these books made me feel so much. And also an added bonus of Mine Till Midnight is that we see some pretty great character development with Leo, who is the only brother of the family. There's even a little bit of like a paranormal aspect to this towards the end, having to do with Leo. Also, while we're here, I'll go ahead and show you the step backs for both these books because they're stunning. And yeah, like, these 2 books are definitely all-time favorites for me. They are both so heart-wrenching, especially Seduce Me at Sunrise. Oh my God, Kev and Winnie's romance. I mean, we also have a hero in this who feels unworthy of the heroine. I do love the other books in this series, but books 1 and 2 for me are just absolute perfection. And if you have not picked up this series yet, what are you doing? All right, guys, we have made it to my number 1 top favorite historical romance of 2022. This is a book that completely took me by surprise. I actually never planned on picking this book up, but I was just in the mood for this vibe in October, and I'm so glad that I picked this book up on a whim. So that is The Vampire Who Loved Me by Teresa Medeiros. Let's look at the step back. I'm so happy that the version that is on Amazon still has the step back. So this is book 2 in the Cabot Duet, which is a paranormal historical romance series. So I can't tell you the names of the hero and heroine because that actually spoils the last part of After Midnight, which is book 1. So just trust my recommendation and go read book 1. Go read After Midnight and then pick this book up and thank me later. But we essentially have our hero who is a vampire, and this is a second chance romance. So 5 years before this book starts, the hero and heroine fell for each other, but because the hero felt unworthy of the heroine and there were other reasons, he ends up fleeing London, and so he's been away for quite some time, but now he's back in London, mainly because we have a villain of the story who was the hero's mistress at one point. And this villain, I can't remember her name, but she gives me so many vibes of both Darla and Drusilla from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe. Yeah, I was here for her character. She was iconic. But because this mistress is now in London and is killing people, the hero comes back to town to take her on. And so our heroine has now become a vampire huntress, and this is just such an epic and amazing second chance romance. This is another book that my review on Goodreads is straight up a checklist of everything that I loved about this. So I'm just gonna read a few things off of my Goodreads review, but like I said, if you wanna know my full thoughts, definitely check out this review. For one thing, I'm obsessed with the paranormal historical romance vibe, and there's also gothic vibes because there's a scene where the hero and heroine end up going to this castle that vampires have taken over. I'm obsessed with how this romance is the perfect balance of sweet, angsty, and sexy. And from page 1, I was sucked into this book, and I did not want to put it down when I picked it up, but alas, life got in the way and I would have to put it down at times. Also, there's dashes of humor in this that genuinely made me laugh out loud. There's also, like I said, this iconic scene that takes place at a gothic castle that vampires have taken over. And so the hero and heroine have to go undercover, and the hero has to act like a villain slash monster to fit in with these vampires. I love scenes like that. It was just so iconic. And I will never get over just how like gone for each other the hero and heroine are, and they will fight to the ends of the earth to be with each other. And the hero just has an amazing redemption arc by the end. It's amazing. Like, it actually made me tear up. It was so beautiful. So like, please pick this duet up and thank me later. I absolutely need to read more from Teresa Medeiros. I'm absolutely, absolutely obsessed. So that is going to be it for my top 10 favorite historical romances of 2022. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of these books, or if you want to tell me your favorite historical romances that you read throughout the year. I always love getting recommendations from you guys. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!